Wavect, the Web3 software company that understands what you want.
Hi everyone, welcome at Wavect. Today with our real product management pro, Asha Susan Cherian. I hope I pronounced it correctly, otherwise please correct me. And she is currently a senior product manager at Jackrabbit Mobile. And today, as you might already guess, we're going to talk about why your Web3 company will almost certainly fail without a product manager. Thank you, Asha, for being here. It's a pleasure talking with you. And yeah, starting out, I would love to hear from you how does your day look like? What are you passionate about? And what actually is a product manager for you?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. I've really enjoyed exchanging comments with you back and forth on LinkedIn for months now, as we just said off camera. Yeah, I am, as you said, a senior product manager, Jackrabbit Mobile. I'll do a quick bio. We are one of the best mobile software development tech consulting companies in the world. We're based in Austin, Texas. I am the lead product person there, working primarily with our biggest client vertical, which are typically startups who've raised over $100 million and are seeking to ideate, build, and take their first mobile app to market. Mobile is a really unique space because anyone can put up a website, right? All you have to do is kind of purchase hosting, pay a couple bucks. However, mobile apps are gated. They require approval by Apple and Google. So a lot of times when companies have raised a fair bit of money, sometimes they might wait if they're launching with a web product. They might wait to launch their mobile product. And when it's time for them to launch their mobile product, they really need to be able to do it right and decrease their risk in terms of planning. And so that's where subject matter experts like us come in, and specifically me, clients really come to me for product vision as well as that subject matter expertise in passing Apple and Google's gatekeepers. Yeah, that's what I do day to day now. My day to day is really lots of meetings. That's the product manager life. You're always either in meetings with stakeholders internally, stakeholders with clients, because I work in tech consulting, or really talking to customers, right? Because that's the core of product management. It's really essential that you're talking to customers all of the time. I'm a big fan of that. And I probably talk to customers even more than the average product manager. So also prior to Jackrabbit, I worked at another tech consulting firm in New York City. That firm was really focused on both web and mobile apps, building for Fortune 500 brands and startups. So, some of my clients included L'Oreal and others. And prior to that, I was a startup founder. That's really how I got my start in tech. I built a digital health app. So from day one, it's really in my bones to own any product that I work on and guide it as if I were the CEO. I'm very comfortable in kind of innovation and experimentation first cultures, blue sky projects. So naturally, I was extremely excited when I discovered Web3. And I don't want to jump ahead too much about how I got into Web3. What do you think, Kevin?
Sure, let us know. Why not?
Okay, awesome. So my Web3 story is really, I first explored blockchain in 2017, completely randomly when I happened to be in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I went to a Harvard MIT blockchain meetup. And I think I was there for a conference or something for work, completely unrelated. And I was just blown away thinking about the massive potential of smart contracts. I went home and I read Satoshi's white paper. When I got back to New York, I looked around for ways to really purchase my first crypto. I had been hearing about Bitcoin since maybe 2012. And, I'm one of those classic people who was like, wow, I would love to get in on this. And I had no idea how to buy. That was before I was even working in any kind of tech space. I used to be a professor teaching kind of this very niche competitive collegiate activity called policy debate. And yeah, just was fascinated by Bitcoin, and but I couldn't figure out how to purchase it. So I waited, and then 2017 I heard more, and then I was like, wow, this is still going on. This is still happening. I still, at that time I was working on my startup. So I had another focus, and it took me another couple of years to really buy my first crypto. And that was kind of it for me. I fast forward to 2021, I started working with the client at my day job called Belong Gaming. They are the fastest growing esports software company in the world, and the US arm of one of the biggest esports companies based in the UK by the name of Vindex. So Belong Gaming is a very cool company. If you haven't heard of them yet, especially if you're in the States, you will be hearing about them. They raised $300 million in their first round. They came to us at Jackrabbit to launch their first mobile app, which I did. Launched that app for them with a team of engineers and designers, built it to scale for hundreds of millions of users. And, we weren't exactly in the Web3 space. In my day job, I really work primarily with Web2 clients. However, we started talking about Web3. I mean, of course, Kevin, just how intimately close the gaming industry is to Web3. And it started making me curious again to start poking around and understand like what kinds of bets are the ones to be making in the space. This was last year, so this was 2021. And then I went to South by Southwest in March of this year of 2022. And that was it. I was like, that's it, hands down. I don't care anymore. I don't care where the market is at. I'm getting into this space. So I started taking on some solo consulting work, advising some companies in the space. I'm currently talking to a Web2 financial services company looking to pivot into Web3 based in the UK, as well as another company that's a blockchain payments company based in California. Potentially going to be working with a space travel DAO that wants to send a member to space.
Wow.
So lots of really fascinating projects happening in the space, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, Web3 can be incredibly crazy, right? A lot of things going on. Yeah, you said a lot of interesting, exciting things. What was, just out of curiosity, what was that? What you were teaching as a professor? I'm just curious. What was that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's this competitive activity, meaning we travel to tournaments around the country, and it's only in the United States, this particular type of debate. It's called policy debate in college, and in high school, it's called cross-examination debate. HBO did a documentary on it many years ago because it's such a strange, bizarre world of nerds and geeks and everything in between. It's a really research intensive, data focused form of debate. So, I think when a lot of people think of debate, they think of like a strapping young man wearing a shirt and tie, standing up on a stage and kind of waxing oratorical about the issues of the day. But this type of debate is very different from that. You spend all of your time before you come to the tournament researching and doing thousands of pages of research. And, of course, now pretty much everything is digital, but when I was debating, for example, when I was in college, I mean, we would take these bins full of 60 to 80 pounds full of evidence, and you'd have 6 of them, and you'd
Wow.
put them on a dolly, and you would literally push tens of thousands of pages of paper into these debate rounds with you around the country. And it was just, it's 2 versus 2 form of debate. So it's you and your partner against other teams from other universities around the country. And yeah, it's really at its core not that different from nascent technologies, insofar as it's all about solving problems, right? The only way that you win debate rounds, especially on the affirmative side, in every tournament, you'll debate both affirmative, meaning affirming the topic, or negative, meaning negating the topic. You have to have a solution that solves a problem to the topic. So it's very creative. The topic could be anything like Middle Eastern politics. It could be US energy policy. It could be global domestic gas prices. And usually it's fairly broad in approach, which enables you to bring your own kind of research interests and perspectives that you can kind of begin your research journey with. So I really loved it. I think it's very creative, very empowering. I loved doing it in high school and then in college. And I had no idea that this would become a career for me. I guess I was pretty okay at it, so I got jobs easily teaching it, and I taught at Fordham University, which is where I went for undergrad, and then I also taught at NYU, at Columbia University. I would frequently judge at like Harvard University tournaments. I also coached for a year at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, which is probably my favorite teaching experience of all time. Huge fan of that institution. It does not get enough credit how brilliant those students are. And the university, I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's like the best and the brightest from around the world in terms of US's allies. So it's not just the future leaders of the US military, but it's also the future leaders of all of our allies as well, and their militaries. So just massive talent, massive, and extremely hardworking. And if they didn't do their assignment, I could punish them by making them do push-ups or laps.
Really?
It was amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Nowhere else could I do that.
Yeah.
To a cadet.
Just spot that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But they never didn't do their assignments. It was actually the opposite. They did more than what was required, always. If I just mentioned the name of a thinker in a lecture, by the next class, 2-3 days later, they went and read the book. So they're very impressive group of students. Yeah.
Crazy. Sounds like that occupation basically taught you or made you experience a lot of very interesting, let's say, nuances when it comes to life, right? Because as you said, having that problem-solving mindset, actually, which is, especially in Web3, a huge one, because many people just build something without actually trying to solve a problem, but rather to build something new, right?
Exactly.
And that's great, right?
Exactly. So important. And that's why, as much as right now, this period in the market that we're in, this kind of crypto down cycle, it's actually a time that I'm incredibly bullish on. And I have a lot of hope that 2023 is just going to be the beginning of like a massive kind of public launch of companies that are completely going to begin to shift the conversation because of massive innovations that are being worked on right now. The companies, like you said, that are focusing on problem solving, utility, they're the ones that are going to win. Those are the ones that are going to be the first big acquisitions in the space. There's probably also going to be consolidation, just as we saw in Web 1 and Web 2. There's a lot of early consolidation that happens. We'll see blockchains consolidate. We'll see protocols consolidate. So yeah, I'm extremely bullish, and I think people should be very hopeful about what's to come. We just have to make it through these tough times.
Yeah, love it. It's not the first time though that we go through these bear markets, right? So in general, as you just said, I'm super bullish as well. And from my humble opinion, I think it's even necessary, right? Just imagine if we just only go upwards, right? Everyone thinks, whatever I do, I'm going to make it, right? Which is a nice mindset for a few months, but long term actually kills the space, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
You talked a lot about these big projects. Like I think you said 100 million valuation per company, right? Is that correct?
Higher valuations, they've raised at least 100 million.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
in fundraising. Yeah.
So, not coming from that angle, I would be curious,
Okay.
but I can imagine already what's the difference. How do we actually differentiate between a product manager and a project manager, right? I give you the
That's a
stage.
great, yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. I'm glad you asked that. So, product managers and project managers can and often do work very closely together on the same initiatives. And sometimes you will even see that they are the same role. I've definitely had product manager roles before where I also functioned as the project manager on the team. But in most cases, and ideally, you don't want that to be the same person because they are two different sets of responsibilities. So the product manager function is really researching, doing market research, creating a product vision for a company or a product or a portfolio of products, depending on how big this company is we're talking about, or if it's a startup, if it's big tech, et cetera. A product manager should be communicating that vision to their stakeholders because, and this doesn't get talked about a lot outside of people who actually work in the industry, but working in tech companies is really fundamentally different, as I'm sure you know, than working in, say, like banking, right? It's a lot more flat in most tech companies. To an outsider, it looks like there's hierarchy, and there absolutely is. When it comes to, levels and skip levels and things like that. In terms of an org chart, there absolutely is a hierarchy. But when it comes to working day to day, teams are typically very flat, right? So if you think about it logically, how do decisions get made if a team is flat? How is it that you make decisions about what bets to actually place? In terms of what product to build, in terms of, what direction a business should go in. That is where stakeholder management really comes in. So after a product manager creates a roadmap that projects the vision for that particular product or suite of products, then it's the product manager's job to now get buy-in from everyone on that team, sometimes from executive leadership, from people all across the organization. So communicating that vision to stakeholders, convincing them why this is the right move to make at this particular time is incredibly important. So just that task alone means you have to be able to constantly translate problems and opportunities in languages that whatever stakeholder can hear, right? So if you're speaking to someone in sales, it might be a very different conversation than if you're speaking to someone in marketing, right? They have different incentives and they have different interests in terms of advancing the imperatives of their own respective functions at the company, right? And then when you're talking to engineering, it's different. When you're talking to the CEO of a company, it's different, or the CIO or the CTO. So you've got to be able to most fundamentally speak technically, non-technically, and more specifically, persuasively, depending on just whomever it is that you're speaking to. So that's a really important task. Another important task of a product manager, developing a strategic plan for that company or that product or that set of products. And like I said before, creating, maintaining product roadmap. So, product manager is really kind of a vision manager. And then the project manager, the way that I see project managers is they are really breaking down initiatives into tasks. So they're planning project timelines, they're allocating project resources, they're monitoring task completion, and then they're communicating progress to stakeholders rather than communicating vision to stakeholders. So really the fundamental distinction here is a product manager is a vision manager, a project manager is a task manager. Both very important and collaborate closely, but serve very unique needs and purposes.
Wow. I didn't expect that, to be honest, flat out. Basically, just to be 100% honest here, I thought the difference is a project manager just has a smaller scope, actually. Like we have that big product and these smaller projects. Like that's what I thought about. So that's from a tech perspective.
Interesting. And there are definitely wide, like varying interpretations, especially when you go even Europe to the United States is different, right? Like people across the United States, this is like a pretty clear distinction, but even what a product manager means is different in Europe. Like I talked to a UK company a couple of months ago. They're pretty sophisticated and pretty far along in the space. Their product managers are project managers, right? And they're in the gaming space. And I was just like, yeah, these are just, it's just where the market is in certain places. But ideally, this is what I think companies should be aiming for. And it's not because I'm like a nationalist for America, like quite the contrary. I spend a lot of time in Europe and love it. But I do think that, when it comes to organizing companies in ways that are most productive, this is the key distinction.
Yeah, actually, I can imagine, or I'm 100% sure, communication is key, right? How you basically, from my understanding, you explain things most of the time and give some structure to it, right? To whom you need to talk to and so on. You said before, since the hierarchies are very flat in tech companies usually, how does the product manager basically come into play when it comes to actually making decisions? How is that?
Yeah, it's hard, Kevin. It's really hard. It's not an easy process, and it's not easy to always communicate those decisions across the organization either. So to answer your question most directly, I think it's important to be collecting data points from lots of different sources, right? So of course, your customers, you want to be speaking to your customers. You want to be, checking in if your company has like a customer support team, right? Like what are the complaints that are coming into customer support when you're evaluating which problems to really take on for whatever period of time it is that you're looking at. What is the biggest kind of problem that enables the company to move the needle in terms of like a North Star metric, for example. Not every company uses North Star metric frameworks. I'm a big fan of them because I think it's really, go
What is
ahead.
it? Sorry.
Okay, sure, no
Just to,
problem. Sure. So a North Star metric, most simply put, is really like the most important metric that the entire team is pursuing, irrespective of which product, right? So sometimes it can be really high level, like engagement or retention, right? So, there's definitely lots of companies that approach it that way. Or it can be something more specific, like, for example, ClassPass. Have you heard of this company, ClassPass,
no, fortunately
before?
not.
Okay, so I'm not sure if they have a market there in Austria, but they're a company that started in the US, in New York, founded by Payal Kadakia, and it's this kind of workout app that it's a booking management workout app that basically gives you, with one app membership that you pay monthly, you get access to every boutique fitness studio in your city, right? And even when you're traveling also. They've kind of experimented with their business model. At certain times, it was like a flat monthly fee for unlimited classes. At other times, it was kind of a points model. But the point is, you used to have to, before ClassPass, go to every single different gym, like go to a yoga studio, go to a boxing studio, go to Pilates, and pay separate memberships until ClassPass came along. And it really, I think it's a brilliant app. Like, I've been talking about this app for years. I'm very impressed by what they've done in the space, in the Web2 space, because they fundamentally shifted behavior. And they incentivized going to class and got a lot of people that were not working out daily, being even just incorporating that into their larger lifestyle, to start working out more regularly, whether it's daily or weekly or monthly, whatever it is for you. They made it frictionless to do that, including when you're traveling, because they're in so many domestic markets in the US, so many international markets as well. And they were acquired at some point during the pandemic for an undisclosed amount, but around or over $1 billion by another big kind of yoga booking management aggregator called MindBody. But yeah, I think the point is, a company like ClassPass, to illustrate North Star metric, their metric was across the entire company, no matter which country they were in, no matter what they were focused on that quarter or their year, how can we get more people to class, right? So if you walked into the office in New York City at ClassPass, in the entrance to the office, there was a running, what is it called? Like a ticker, right?
Yeah.
That showed exactly how many people have booked classes around the world with ClassPass, right?
Wow.
And yeah. And I love that as the perfect illustration for North Star metric, because then everyone in the company knows, no matter what we're thinking about, on the micro level, on the macro level, everything directs back to, let's get more people to go to class. Let's get more people to go to more classes. So
Love it. Didn't know that there's a name for that. Basically, purposeful organizations, right? You have one big vision and you try to achieve that, right? One, I would say, approach that I really like associated with that is OKRs, like also objectives and key results, right? Where you basically also have these tiny visions broken down to employees or also the company and so on, right? And also try to achieve those so-called North Stars, right? But the actual steps to it don't really matter, right? You just need or should try to achieve that. That's super cool.
Exactly. What you're describing is really kind of an empowered model of product management. There's a writer and a thinker. He's probably the number one product guru or god living today in terms of product management. His name is Marty Kagan, and he's written many books. One of them is called Empowered, and it's precisely what you just said, which is, you don't want to be micromanaging your product managers. If you want your company to succeed, give them that final goal. Tell them, hey, this is the company's business objective for this year, this quarter, whatever. Go experiment and do whatever you need to do to hit that metric, to move that needle, right? And then that empowers them to really own their product, right? And sometimes you don't even need to tell them what that metric is, right? You tell them, this is your product. Here are our high level kind of business goals that we're all focused on, and then let them go figure out the rest. I'm a really big fan of that. It's why actually I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn trying to fill in the gap, because I think there's a lot of people in Web3 today who are just like, okay, I'm doing an NFT drop. My friends who've done NFT drops before, or the most successful projects that I've read about before, I think they had NFT project managers. So I guess I'll just hire an NFT manager, right? And I will tell them, this is what we're going to do. Here, you go and complete this list of tasks. And you're never going to create innovation that way, right? Like, that individual has no incentive to find better ways of working with engineering, to kind of improve the process across the organization. They're not going to be challenged to be thinking about vision. Like, I'm a big, big fan of hire smart people and let them tell you what to do. And there's not enough of that in Web3 today. So if you've done some drops, or, if you're building out a metaverse team and you're just not seeing results, hire some product managers and let them tell you what to do and see what happens. I mean, especially Web2 experienced individuals, they're the kind of the silent goal keepers, or like, what do you call a person who makes the winning shot in a soccer game, right?
Yeah.
They're the silent MVPs of businesses across technology. And, in the early days of Silicon Valley in America, you can read book after book about how Google and all these other companies were created with product managers and developers. That was it. That was really it. The product manager was even doing the designing. And I think they're kind of a little bit of the unsung heroes of innovation. So I'm a big cheerleader for them, and always happy to see more and more companies getting it.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's definitely a big issue, right? What you basically just said, the waterfall model, like planning everything out, is definitely that, especially I wouldn't say that, but it's not very useful in many occasions when it comes to software development, at least, right? Because you have to adapt a lot. And then that's where basically the big vision can help a lot, right? You don't need to solve it that specific way. If you find a better solution for it, then do it. Change your mind, change the direction maybe, right? Do something different, and then then let's do some 100%. Stakeholder management.
Yeah. Right, 100%. And I want to ask you a question about this too, because I know you've been a developer for a long time. You're so right. That waterfall way of working, I think, is also happening a lot in Web3 right now, where people are, if you remember a couple of months ago, before the market crashed, people were saying, oh, we have 2 and 3 year roadmaps, as if that was a good thing. And it is on a high level. Sure, you can have like a plan for the company and what you're going to do in phases. But to your point, if you're not working in an agile way, if you're not saying, okay, look, we're going to, in one sprint, two sprints, whatever, we're going to release this chunk of work out into the wild to users to test. And then we're going to collect feedback and iterate on that feedback and let our users tell us exactly what we should be building for them, then you're missing out on the biggest opportunity that software provides. I mean, if we look at the history of innovation, the reason that we started working in waterfall ways is it comes from the auto industry, right? Which is, obviously hardware. It's a physical product. You have to have a large manufacturing facility of, again, people who are all working on industrial lines and require massive amounts of planning at the front end, right? But the advantage of software is you don't need all of that. And so it's really, you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage versus your competitors if you're not finding ways to be nimble, fast, get things out to market as quickly as possible and test. Because no matter how brilliant you are, no matter which university you went to or who your mentor is or what you've done in the past, nobody knows how the market is going to react to things. And your best bet is always just building for your user. And I'm a big fan also of companies like Glossier, which is like, I think they're going through they've had some bad experiences in the last couple of years culturally. And so I'm not saying they're like a cool company today still, but there's still some learnings from their early days. I don't know if you've heard of them, Kevin. Okay, well, they are a makeup company, so it might make sense that you hadn't heard of them, but they're very innovation forward. And the reason that they became really famous, I think outside of just, women who wear makeup, is they created the direct to consumer model using social media. So the founder, this woman, Emily Weiss, was just someone, she was like an intern at Vogue magazine or something. She didn't have any special expertise in beauty. And she decided she wanted to start something. So she started with a blog and it was called Into the Gloss. And she had some connections through Vogue. And so she just asked, some of these like famous people in beauty and makeup, hey, can I come to your house and see what beauty products you use? Like what's in your medicine cabinet in your bathroom? And can I write a blog post about that? And she did a few, and then suddenly people started talking about it. And she got some big advertisers to support her blog. And so she started building out an Instagram page. And this was probably, I don't know, somewhere between 2015, 2016, something like that. So it was still relatively early in Instagram's days. And it was just amazing what she did, because she used the blog to feed into building a large following on Instagram of people who loved beauty products and who were really excited about these influencers in the beauty space. She built a huge, hundreds of thousands of people following Glossier, big community, big audience. And then she had the opportunity to finally build her first beauty product. And she went to them and she said, what do you want me to build?
That's
like
the right
literally,
approach.
literally, it was just like a question, like, what do you want? And their team just collated thousands of answers, and they were like, okay, now we have a list of maybe 5 things. And then they went and did their own research. What does the market really need right now? What would be something based on these 5 things? Let's get our own data now, right? You don't follow the customer blindly, but you use them as a starting point. You go do your own research, and then you build something. And then you put it in front of them again and ask them, what did you think of that first product I built? You know, and you see how many of them are actually buying it. And the crazy thing that happened with her was she literally had not sold $1 worth of product. And when she launched her first product, she was sold out. I think it was like 50,000, 60,000 units in a day.
Wow.
First product before she had ever launched anything to the market. And then the second drop was like hundreds of thousands sold out. Like you could not buy these products. And the only thing they were doing was they connected with their community. They gave that space a real community to connect with one another. And they built rabid fans before they'd even, launched one thing to market. So, and they kept continuing with that model. They never departed. They kept building for their user. So yeah, even with non-digital products, like this is a model that really works. And Web3 has the potential to just throw gasoline on that, right? And that's why it's like we have these communities in Web3 that everyone talks about, but like product manager's perspective on Web3 communities, there's so much more that can be done to utilizing these frameworks from Web2 to just massively supercharge the business and not just make money for the company, but also just be able to give so much more value to those community members.
Wow, really love that. Yeah, in the end, it's people buy from people that they trust, they like, and where they actually get some value out of it, right? So
100%.
if you
Yep.
know what people want, right? And actually, as you said, I really like that when you said don't follow the customer's needs blindly, right? Because that's the huge criticism people have when asking customers, right? Or potential clients. But actually gather the information and then elaborate on that and actually build something that they really need, not what they want, right? And
Yep.
that's super cool.
Yeah, such a good point, Kevin. Yeah, I love that quote. I think it was Henry Ford,
Yeah.
right? Who said, if I gave my customers exactly what they told me they wanted, I would have built a faster horse.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what happens when you don't know the difference between, you want to listen to your customers' problems, get really, really intimate with understanding their problems, but you don't necessarily depend on your customers to innovate and solve the problem for you. You're
Yeah.
the subject matter expertise at innovation. That's what you're being paid for, right? So that's the hard work. And that's why we're all in this space, right? But I want to ask you a question too. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, feel free to.
So you do these amazing conversations on this podcast, and you have a wealth of experience too from the developer's perspective. What are you most excited about in terms of I think about software development best practices in Web3 because we have so many kind of robust frameworks for that to follow in Web2. And we've got some in Web3, but they're still emerging. Like, how do you think about that, about best practices?
The first thing that I would say is what I really, just to give you some context, I was always a clean code advocate, right? Writing code that is maintainable, readable, and secure as possible, right? And in Web2, that's not the case at all in most companies. Like, if you look into their code base, yeah, it's a pain. I can't tell you, right? And Web3, especially smart contracts, right? Because you develop it once, right?
Yeah.
And then save it on the blockchain, simply said, right? You can't change much anymore. So that actually forces developers to code in a more efficient and secure way, right? They can't, I would say usually costs a lot of money if you introduce didn't cover any bugs with tests, for example, right? And they get into production. That's gonna be an issue probably, and that's what I love most about this space.
Very cool. So you're Mr. Clean Code. Okay, I'm gonna remember that.
I try to code as clean as possible. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Okay. We got to have more conversations about this. I want to dig in because I'm always thinking about like optimizing that end-to-end development process for clients that I potentially work for, and test nets and all of these different things that I'm always evaluating. But maybe next time we might have to have another conversation on that.
Sure. Thank you. I was open for that. I would say really amazing episode so far. Would you maybe have 3 key takeaways you want people to remember from this episode?
Absolutely. Great question. So 3 takeaways. First, I think if you are thinking about starting a Web3 project, thinking about becoming a Web3 startup founder, if you are working at a Web3 company right now, always remember that no matter what your role is, especially if you're in product or project, or if you're a founder, business first, right? We culturally, I think in Web3, there's a lot of this talk about not wanting to be seen as a cash grabbing project or product or company, but that is not what it means to be a business, to be a successful business, right? You're never going to be able to deliver as much value as possible to your end user until you have a sound business around whatever your Web3 aim is, right? Whether it's an NFT drop, whether it's a DAO. I wrote a post about this on LinkedIn today because I think this is a huge problem in the space, that people are, even now in this bear market, a lot of people are still not thinking about kind of long-term sustainable, this is what you were saying, right, earlier on LinkedIn, sustainable business practices that ensure that you're going to actually be able to provide significant value to your community. Your community is the best Web3 NFT collections, for example, always have the strongest community. And a big part of why they join and they invest in those NFTs is not, it might be sure for the cool points of having that NFT, that blue chip NFT, but they're also investing a lot of time in this community. So how can you ensure that you are giving back as much value to those individuals that are spending hours and hours every day in those Discord channels, traveling to events around the world, around your respective countries, for those events? I mean, you really have to kind of show up. And I think that means business first, and just be a subject matter expert. That is not a Web 2 idea. That is a innovation and winning Web 3 kind of model. So big advocate for that. Always think about the business. And secondly, always think about your user. On my product teams, any projects that I work on, any products that I work on, it doesn't matter if you're a developer, if you're a designer, if you're a product manager, we are always talking about the user, right? So how can you, even if you don't have product managers at your Web3 team yet, how can you start evangelizing across your teams the perspective of the user? Because this is something that you will see at the best tech companies in the world, that it is not just the product managers that are thinking about the user. The developers are, the designers are, everyone's kind of tracking user behavior in their respective domains, or they're thinking about building for that user, how they can do that with the least number of steps possible, with decreasing friction, with maximizing efficiency, getting people to, just have the ideal experience. So just always be thinking about that user first. And number three, if you don't know who a product manager is, go and find one in your local community, your local company. Go befriend a product manager, because that is a person that is spending all day, every day, thinking about how to solve problems, how to make companies better, how to connect the dots between problems, process, people, and products. And they're going to have a lot of learnings to share with you. So no matter what you're doing in Web3 or beyond, keep a product manager close. I think it's a good resource to have in your back pocket.
I love it. Reminds me a lot about the people first mindset, right? If it's your employees, or in that case, your actual user base, right? Those that actually then use your end product. So awesome. Thank you, Asha, for that incredible conversation. Really was a pleasure talking with you. And yeah, as everyone watching here, I want to thank you as well. And if you, as Asha just said, ever need a product manager, here you have a perfect example to reach out for. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kevin. Really big fan of all the awesome work that you're doing on LinkedIn and beyond. And thanks for having me. We'll chat soon, hopefully.
Means a lot. Likewise. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Wavect, the Web3 software company that understands what you want.